Hi, and welcome back to Lisa's Stamp Studio. My name is Lisa Curcio. The beautiful sunburst technique looks just like this. And while that might look challenging to create those panels, I've got a super easy tip for you today. I'm using a mixture of designer paper and brushed foil for today's card, but I have two other samples to share with you, one of which is a variation on this sunburst technique. You'll be able to find a link down in the video description below, which will lead you over to the pictures, cutting dimensions, and supplies for today's project. And if this is your first time visiting my channel, I would love to have you subscribe. Click the subscribe button down below, and next to it, click that bell icon so that you'll receive notifications when I'm live right here on YouTube, as well as when I share a new video. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's card. You'll need to house the sunburst papers on a piece of cardstock. This is measuring 2 3/4 by 5 inch. I've chose my designer series paper from a brand new package called Gilded Autumn. Like most of the Stampin' Up papers, they are double-sided, giving you lots of options. In addition to that, I'm going to be bringing in some brushed foil, which I'll go over with you in just a moment. But let's begin by walking you through how to cut these panels to get those angles for the sunburst technique. I have my Stampin' trimmer here. I love it because of the clear cutting guide. You'll also see that there's a nice straight ledge here at the top for your cardstock, and of course, printed and protected grid lines and measurements. The trimmer comes with both a scoring and a cutting blade, and they navigate up and down out of the way so that you can keep them on the cutting track here at the same time. Now, the cutting track is designated by this black strip here down at the center, and this is where the blade travels. Since we're going to want to cut 2 panels of this designer series paper, they're going to need to be cut in 2 separate directions. So let me explain to you the easiest way. You're going to pivot the paper tip to tip on an angle inside that black cutting strip. The easiest way to line it up is to make sure that the top tip and the bottom tip is rotated so that it lines here at the bottom. Now, since we have to do 2 panels in order to make the sunburst technique on this card with this specific paper, this other one will need to go in the other direction. And the absolute easiest way to do that is to actually put them here on the trimmer at the exact same time. So this one, you can see that the bottom right is in the trimmer. So the bottom right on this one is going to be going in the opposite direction. So the bottom left is going to be here, and the upper right is going to be here. Once you have them aligned in the trimmer correctly, go ahead and close that clear cutting guide. That will secure them in place, and then just slice, and that will give you both panels at the exact same time. Now, I decided to bring in another piece of paper with this just to create some contrast. And here you'll see the beautiful brushed foil. This one coordinates beautifully with the designer series paper. I cut it the exact same way, lining them up on the cutting track at the exact same time. Now let's go ahead and start putting the sunburst technique together. I'm going to be using one of the small grid papers to help me mark the center on that piece of vanilla cardstock. I'm going to rotate this because I know the measurements here 1 through 7 are facing this way. You'll recall this piece that we cut that's going to be able to house those sunbursts. I'm going to line this up right here on the grid paper, and I'm going to make a mark at the 2.5 inch point, which is right here. I'm just going to make a little tick mark there. That's going to indicate the center so we know where to start. I'm going to turn the paper around now, and you'll see that the pencil mark is here. I'm going to be using my silicone craft sheet to protect my work surface. Adhesive, liquid glue, and hot glue will not stick to this, which makes it a perfect accompaniment here in the studio. So I'm going to lay my cardstock here with that pencil mark here at the center at the top. We've got now our designer series panels that are here and the brush foil pieces that are here. The first step is going to be to add adhesive around the perimeter and down the center of this cardstock so that it can hold those sunburst strips in place. I'm using this Stampin' Seal Plus, and I'm going to work very close to the outside edge. This is one reason why I love the silicone craft sheet, so any excess will fall there and not on my table. Once you've gone all the way around, I like to go ahead and make an X in the center of the paper. This is going to secure all those ends, especially those fine tips. Now that the adhesive is in place, you can see the pencil mark here in the center. Let's start with our first panel. You're going to want to choose one that has a straight edge so it'll line up with that pencil mark. I'm going to turn this to make it a little bit easier for my hand, and I'm going to align this outside edge with that pencil mark, looking to make the top edge of that designer paper as straight as possible, and then we'll tack that in place. Now I'm going to alternate. So on this side now, I'm looking for a panel with a straight edge. So that would be this one. You can see that these are clearly different. So you're going to want to make sure that this is straight so that it'll mirror this one. And this one's going to get attached on this side of the designer series paper. Work your panels together as closely as possible. Now we're going to alternate. So on this side now, we're going to go to a piece of foil. Again, with your straight edge along this angled edge. Now I want to give you a very important tip. This now is going to become broader, which is one reason why these pieces are nice and long. You're going to have to navigate this to make sure that you don't miss this upper corner. So I'm looking there first to make sure I've got it lined up and I've got sufficient paper covering the bottom, and then we'll tack that in place. Now let's continue along this side. I'll take this straight edge now with the other pattern, and I'll do the same thing. And you can see it's getting narrower, so it's going to be easier to fill. Looking to try to get these as close as possible. And then finally, there's a little section here, and I'm going to talk to you about trimming this when we're all finished. And I'll go ahead and fill that in. Go ahead and press securely so those are well stuck to that paper. Now let's turn it and work on this side. So you can see our next pattern is going to be the designer series paper, again with a straight edge against this angled edge. Make sure you navigate it up here high enough to cover the whole thing. Put it up against the edge of the foil and then tack that in place. We're going to go now to the other piece of foil and we're going to fill this area in and the area below it, just like we did on this side. Once you have the papers adhered, it's going to look very much like this. Go ahead and rub very gently from the front, and then I like to flip it over because then I have a better presence of where the cardstock actually is. And then I'll go back and burnish this with my fingers to make sure that those are all well stuck, especially here at the corners. If you choose to, you can go ahead and place this in your trimmer because of course the adhesive is on the front side. I prefer to use a pair of scissors because I have a little bit better eye at getting close enough without going too far. I keep a pair of scissors here in the studio designated specifically for sticky projects. That's what the red ribbon is for. I'll be using this piece of cardstock as a guide on where to cut. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to cut away any excess. That would include the very top piece that we started with. And we're going to go all the way around. When you're all finished, your piece is going to look like this. So it's been perfectly trimmed onto that piece of cardstock. I'm going to set that aside for just a moment, and I'm going to bring in another piece of very vanilla cardstock. This piece and this piece are actually going to get adhered together. The reason you're going to use the smaller piece for the sunburst strips is to make sure that they're perfectly aligned. This is going to house the greeting. I chose to use the words, "Thank you for all you are," and those come from the stamp set called Best Year. It's a great group of greetings for all different occasions to be used throughout the year. Because I wanted to find an ink closely related to this color foil, I decided to use the soft suede. Although I found this was a little bit dark, I did find that by reducing the color shade, it looked a little bit more closer to this. I'm going to bring that grid paper back in, and this is where I'm going to stamp off that excess coverage. I'll go ahead and now ink this up, and I'm going to stamp one layer of ink here. I'll move that off to the side, and I'll bring that cardstock back in, and I'm going to stamp this here near the very bottom center. I'll bring the silicone craft sheet back in, and here is our sunburst panel. Let's go ahead and flip this over and let's add adhesive to the back side. Once again, I'm going to come around the perimeter with that Stampin' Seal Plus. I'll take this layer now with the widest part of my sunburst here at the top. We are going to mimic the top of those designer series papers and foils to the top of this very vanilla cardstock, and we'll go ahead and press that in place. This is the time now where I chose to add my ribbon. This beautiful basket weave ribbon also includes a metallic combination, but I decided to use this green because it coordinated beautiful with the designer series paper. You'll see I have two pieces here. You'll want to cut this piece about an inch bigger than what you're going to need, and I like securing it with glue dots. So I have my glue dots here, and I'm going to peel back one of those, and I'll place the edge of my ribbon on that glue dot, which is going to lift it off. And I'll do the exact same thing now on this side. Now that the glue dots are on the edges, I'm going to align this to the very bottom of the designer series paper where it separates the greeting. And now I'm attaching the raw ends to the back of this layer. I decided to house this on another piece of coordinating cardstock. This is mint macaron, and it measures 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and take this and turn it upside down, and I'll add adhesive around the perimeter. I'm also going to add adhesive right over that ribbon because I want to make sure, as thick and beautiful as that ribbon is, it doesn't lift off of my layer. This now is going to get mirrored here onto that mint cardstock, leaving a border all the way around. We're going to add this other piece of ribbon in just a moment, but I've got my card base here. This is 5.5 by 8.5. I scored it in half at 4.25 right before you joined me. I love to use my bone folder for that nice crisp edge on my card. I'll take this layer now and I'm going to flip it over and add more adhesive. This layer now is going to get adhered to the base of the card, and we'll tack that down. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my knot. I didn't want to do it first because I knew that would create a bumpy surface when I turn this layer upside down. This smaller piece is about 5 inches. I'm going to slip that up underneath the one that we tacked down, which is one reason why I didn't put any glue dots here. And then I'm going to tie a single knot. By creating 2 pieces, you are going to save yourself at least 4 inches of ribbon on every card that you create. Now, once that's secure, because I know it's a basket weave, I'm going to go ahead with my scissors and I'm going to clean up those ends by just cutting them fresh. And to make sure that this knot stays in alignment where I want it, especially as it's coming in and out of the envelope, I'm going to use a glue dot. And this is a great tip for you. I like to use my Take Your Pick tool. I've got the paper piercing tool attachment here. I'm going to pick up one of the glue dots and I'm going to ball it up so that it's small. I'm going to take it and I'm going to place it exactly where I want it on my cardstock to hold that ribbon in place, and then I'll press. You can see now that this will not move, especially as it's coming in and out of the envelope. Now you'll also recall that I promised I was going to share 2 other cards with you. This one uses the Christmas Means More greeting and the beautiful designer series paper called Heartwarming Hugs. All the paper is from the same pack, so instead of using the foil, I just chose 2 different patterns. I double layered this one to add some emphasis to the color. Now I have one other for you, and this is a variation. This Halloween card actually turns the sunburst in the other direction, so the thinner areas are at the top. This greeting comes from Ghoulish Goodies, and I used the brand new iridescent pearls to help separate those words. You'll be able to find the products that I used today in the Stampin' Up! Catalogs. If you don't already have a demonstrator and you are interested in receiving a copy, you can head over to lisasstampstudio.com and click on Catalogs to request one there. I would love to know which of today's cards is your favorite. Would you leave me a comment below? And if you have enjoyed today's video, would you please give it a thumbs up here on YouTube, which is a like? It certainly helps. And I look forward to having you join me next time. Have a great day.